Welcome to the Veterinary Marketing Podcast, where it's all about helping your veterinary practice attract, engage, and retain clients. Broadcasting a new podcast every Monday from sunny Southern California, here's your host, Brandon Bashirs.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to episode number 214 of the Veterinary Marketing Podcast. I hope you're doing wonderful today. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to make your job marketing more successful. And specifically, we're talking about offer creation, which is how do you market your job openings so that they attract the right kinds of employees and get more traction. I think this is really, really timely. And I'll give you a little bit more details here in just a second. Before we begin, I want to mention a few things. First, if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe in iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. And then right now, if you have not signed up for the 10-week marketing workshop that is running, go on over to the Facebook group, the Veterinary Marketing Nerds. Request to join, sign up. There's a bunch of links in there that can get you signed up completely free. It's really turning out really good. I think it's helping a lot of people. So head on over to facebook.com/groups/the Veterinary Marketing Nerds and request to join on that 10-week workshop. I would also like to mention this episode is being sponsored by two websites by Brad Haven. We have usedvetequipment.com and newvetequipment.com. For 8 years now, usedvetequipment.com has been helping vets buy and sell used equipment. You save money when you buy used veterinary equipment on everything from cages, kennels, pumps, x-ray equipment, lasers, ultrasounds, dental equipment, surgery equipment, lab equipment from Abaxis, IDEX, and Heska. They have tables, tubs, and sinks. What do you have to sell? usedvetequipment.com. They bring the buyer and seller together. And if you're also looking for new equipment with amazing warranties, head on over to newvetequipment.com where they show you the price up front. They've got digital x-ray equipment, dental x-ray equipment, ultrasound equipment, LED surgery lighting, surgery tables, full-size autoclaves. When you go to newvetequipment.com, you'll clearly see the price on every item for sale, and you'll also be able to check out the warranty so that you buy without regret. Again, that's newvetequipment.com, where they show you the price and give you a great warranty. All right, so today we are talking with CJ Burnett and Tom Seeko. They're from flvetadvisors.com, and they're based out of Tampa, Florida, although they help veterinarians across the country. But they started their company and started helping vets back in 2014, and they've been doing some great things with specifically financial planning. And you might be saying, well, why are financial planners talking about jobs? They know about all kinds of things that I really have no expertise in, which includes benefits packages, ownership packages if you're looking to sell your practice and have somebody come on and kind of take over the reins, which is a really popular type model right now. They have so much expertise and so much knowledge. So I was really glad to speak with them and have them share this. But I tell you, something it must be going on, because in the past week, I have to say 4 people reach out to me on, hey, can we run ads and can we talk about how to attract new veterinary talent to our practice? And there's, a few parts to attracting the right kinds of people. Number one, you need to have eyeballs on the offer. So you need to get attention that you're hiring, right? And that's like where paid traffic comes in. But then the offer specifically, how do we make this effective so that people actually want to take you up on the offer? And so that's what we talk about in more detail here. And they bring up a lot of things that I think will help a lot of people here today. So without further ado, here's CJ and Tom. Definitely. Well, today on the podcast, we have CJ Burnett and Tom Seeko from Florida Veterinary Advisors. Thank you guys so much for joining me on the podcast. I've been talking to you for a long time, Tom, so I'm really excited to have you on the podcast finally here.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to be here.
Well, thank you. And thank you, CJ, for jumping on too. And I'm really excited to talk to you guys because this is one of the biggest difficulties that practices are facing right now, which is hiring and recruiting and retaining. And really, I think that we're going to talk about some cool things about how to try to attract the right kinds of people to your practice and to your company. But Before we start, can you guys just give a little rundown of how you got started in the veterinary industry and kind of your backstory on how you got here?
Well, I'll take the lead on that a little bit, and I'll let CJ chime in here as well. We actually started working with veterinarians back in, I think it was around 2014 is when we started getting in the industry. And it's kind of a little bit of a silly story to a certain degree. We're always told that we should find a industry or a community or someone that we can be able to help the most. And I was sitting in a training session one day about disability insurance, and veterinarians were on the list of what they call like hot markets or people to go talk to. And they were the ones that I felt like I would identify with the most, just because of my passion and love for animals. And as we, started doing a little bit more research into just the industry and started talking to veterinarians, we realized that there was a hole when it came to just overall financial well-being for associates, for practice owners. And, over time, I'll let CJ kind of chime on this, but we've been growing a lot over time.
Yeah. And I think back in 2014, when we joined forces, it was, we started working with a few vets, and then a few vets referred us to other vets. And then it kind of grew from there.
Super cool. Yeah, that's really awesome. So before we started recording, I was talking to you guys. I constantly have people asking me about how do we attract people and markets to people, whether it be veterinarians, hospital managers, chiefs of staff from like medical chiefs of staff, vet techs, all the way down, right? People are having a really hard time. I got an email this morning about running ads, and there's a lot of difficulty there because of like laws and things, but running ads and running traffic is just one piece of marketing. And the other piece is like the offer, which is how do you make it attractive to not only attract the right people, but also retain and reward the current people. And there's like so many implications in there. I just think it would be extremely valuable to talk about like what's working right now. What do you see working right now? What are some of the misconceptions with this? And I know that there's so many technical questions about like benefits and all kinds of things. So I just think this is going to be really helpful to the audience, for people that are either themselves trying to find a great position or people that are trying to hire great people. So right now, what do you see as maybe the biggest kind of opportunities in the industry that people aren't maybe taking advantage of, or something you think they should be looking at?
Well, I think the biggest opportunity that most veterinary practices are really missing out on are a lot of the same type of employment arrangements or employee agreements, whether it be with successors or potential successors or doctors in general. There are other industries that will use certain types of benefits that veterinarians just simply aren't aware of. And it's beyond just 401ks and group health insurance, because those are the ones that typically come to people's minds as far as what is going to like retain an employee. But we hear a lot, like people think that a 401k or health insurance is going to retain an employee, when in fact, it's not going to retain your employee if the business down the street offers the same stuff, which Banfield and a lot of other corporations, they offer 401ks, they offer group health insurance, they offer dental, life, all those kinds of things. So I think there's a big miss in just really understanding what retention programs are and how to leverage those retention programs for the ultimate objectives of the owner as well as the employee.
That definitely makes sense. And with a lot of these like retention programs that are out there, is it possible for smaller companies to compete with these larger corporations, or is that generally not like the same, or not a possibility? So they have to maybe get more creative.
Yeah,
it's possible.
I think it's the only way they can compete with these larger companies, because it's not necessarily in how much you pay somebody, it's how you pay them that matters. And so right. If these corporations are providing salaries, 401ks, and health insurance, then being a small business owner, you can't offer that and just that. Or what you can do is you can offer something else in lieu of that, maybe perhaps incentivizes the employee more so than having a 401k.
What would be some examples of that you think are underused for small practices?
Well, there's probably several, and a lot of them depend on two things. The first thing is, when is that business owner going to effectively exit their practice? So I'm a certified exit planner, right? There's a certification out there that people like us can get, where we help business owners exit their practice. And people, to get a good exit plan, will need probably about 5 to 10 years. That's kind of the good range. So if people are thinking, well, I'm going to exit in 5 to 7 years, well, this is the perfect time to actually start planning for that exit. Based on the owner's timeline, will then oftentimes help us figure out, okay, what do we need the employees? What are the employees inside the business? Who are they that they need to be retained? Is it a practice owner? Is it another doctor? Is it multiple doctors? And, what ages are they? What are the things that are important to them? And then usually when you can understand the objectives of the business owner and then also line those up with the objectives of the employees, that will give you a list of the type of benefits that are available. Retention stay bonus programs, CERT plans, non-qualified deferred comp plans. There's a lot of things that are out there that are at someone's disposal, but how you structure it and what you use all depends on the objectives of the people that are involved.
That's very interesting. So it's not just, attracting and hiring more people for potentially scaling, but also just retaining them so that when you sell the practice that they I'm sure that this is a conversation that practice owners are having, or I'm not sure if it is, but it definitely makes sense to try to. Go ahead.
Add to that as well. Just one thing to include is that where a lot of practice owners out there at the same time, they're not taking a lot of consideration into what is the intentionality behind every dollar that they're spending for different programs and benefits. Because something could sound good, but then if your idea of wanting to bring more people into the practice and be able to hire new people, get them to want to be excited to be there versus while they're trying to compete with corporations or other businesses in the area, of course that falls more into the attraction or recruitment type area. And then there are other components though too. If I would say to tie this a little bit with marketing, when you can entice the people that are already working there, either from the collective as a collective total, when it comes to like the techs and the other people that are in the practice, like practice managers, and then being able to decipher the ones that are, let's say, more of in a key position to where they could impact the business. There are ways to establish types of programs or different types of ways to entice them to want to, let's say, work harder, which could help drive the overall profitability, the revenue of the business up further. And it's just all about making sure, understanding where I'm putting my dollars to where it's actually helping me as a practice owner really achieve the goals that I'm trying to get to.
Every business has a certain amount of cash flow that they can allocate towards employees. And if you spend those dollars strategically, then oftentimes you'll make every single dollar go a little bit further.
That's definitely true and makes sense. So when somebody is thinking about, or when somebody approaches you, what are the things that they are typically doing wrong, in your opinion, that they should really stop doing that's going to help them to get better candidates for employees, like most of the time for the average practice owner? Like let's say a 1 to 3 doctor practice, for example.
Well, there's multiple ways that so when it comes to recruiting, I think that especially right now, recruiting and rewarding are two topics that come up pretty consistently in the different seminars that I've seen, or even in these larger conferences. They bring up a lot of this stuff of, okay, how do you attach a reward mechanism to something that is very specific to the person in the business? And so, because you don't want to reward employees with like a cash bonus at the end of the year because the company did well. Because oftentimes, if you bonus an employee $1,000, what do you think they're going to want next year?
Yep, $2,000.
Yeah, they're going to want at least what you gave them the first year. And so when you start bonusing employees and rewarding them without having it attached to some sort of profitable metric, then now you're effectively incentivizing them to just stick around. Mm-hmm. And that may or may not be good for the culture. That may or may not be good for the business. And so when it comes to rewarding, making sure that anything that you have that you're rewarding employees with is directly tied to some sort of performance measure that they have control over, that increases the revenue or increases the profits, is valuable. That's kind of how we want people to think of reward programs. When it comes to recruiting, it's a little bit different, because recruiting, now you're talking about, the structure of a package that you're going to offer, and from the compensation perspective. And, I've seen a lot of veterinarians not go with a big corporation and go with a smaller company, because they know that there's a potential for them to own that practice one day. And, there are cultural things that come up within that conversation, as far as, how the practice is run. And, is it an easygoing practice? Are everyone friends in the practice? Is it a business, or is it more of a family? And I think when it comes to recruiting, I think more and more we're seeing younger people want to come to a place where they enjoy working, as opposed to getting an extra $5,000 or $10,000 a year in pay.
Sure, that definitely makes sense. When you're thinking about developing these kind of like benefits that are competitive with a like trying to compete with a large scale corporation, which has the group health insurance, the 401k, and all these things, which you mentioned that, maybe these small businesses can't compete with. Do you suggest that people, when they're trying to create the offer for the job employment, should they just be like, we're open to suggestions, or like try to make it up as they go? Or should they be actually advertising like, here's the 5 options that we have and you can pick 2 of them? Or do you have any kind of suggestions on that? Because I'd be interested to hear. Like, I think sometimes if you give people choices, they can, it's either beneficial or it just causes too much decisions, and then it might make it more difficult to close a potential recruit. So like, what are your thoughts on that?
Right.
Yeah, that's a pretty good question. It's a very tough question to answer. I think perhaps context is everything, especially when it comes to what people are looking after. So I could probably give a story of even a veterinarian that we know who wanted to sell the practice to somebody who's in the business right now. The problem with selling the business to someone who's inside the practice is, obviously they don't have the same amount of money as a corporation is going to, right? Mm-hmm. So an exiting owner has to have somewhat of an idea of what their personal objectives are on their exit, upon their, like, how much are they going to need whenever they do sell the business, so that whenever they do in fact step into retirement, they've got enough personal assets to produce the income that they need from their lifestyle. Because that's one of the biggest reasons why veterinarians don't sell, is because they don't have enough personal assets on their own balance sheet. So whenever they do sell the business, they've got enough assets to produce the income that they're used to living on. They're used to living on, X amount of dollars. And then if they sell, they're going to be living on half of whatever X was. And so they hold on to the business as long as they possibly can, because they just know that they're not able to sell the business and still live the same lifestyle. Yeah. And so, there's a practice owner out there that said, hey, I want to sell it to an insider. The insider doesn't have any money. But the insider wants to buy it. And so structuring a package, some sort of employment arrangement, bringing on a doctor internally to have not kind of a multifaceted purchase is the most, I'd say the most beneficial. Most people will just assume that you can do it through a seller's note, where the exiting owner provides a loan to the incoming owner, and then the exiting owner leaves and crosses their fingers and hopes that over the next 10 years they're going to get the money from the business. And that is also not an incredibly, I would say, exciting avenue for them, because now they wanted financial independence from the business, and now more than ever their financial life, their retirement, is completely reliant on the business, more so than it was before, because they don't have any control over it anymore.
Yeah. Definitely. They're just hoping for it to work out. and they're not able to help out. Yeah.
And so we actually can design a package where there's a 2 or 3 part transition to avoid a lot of the tax issues that come with that particular scenario. And that way the person that's being hired has a clear understanding that within a certain amount of time, they're going to own the business. And the person that's exiting the business has comfort in knowing that the plan itself is not completely reliant on things that are outside of their control.
To bring something up in addition to that, because you'd asked earlier too as well, Brandon, about the comparison of, hey, if I'm looking to provide some type of benefits, what would I do? And a lot of the times, we're practice owners, what we find a lot of the times is that they will just do something because it sounds good. And it doesn't really help them as a general whole, as a business owner, as like, of course, like at the end of the day, we have to also understand where we're trying to go with this business to then be able to determine what are the appropriate things to put in place. So like if you are recruiting, there are certain things of like, if your competitor down the road is offering a 401k and you're not offering some kind of a retirement plan, that might be something you want to consider. Health insurance. Maybe there's the possibility, as what CJ was saying a second ago as well, that the ownership component, that tends to be a huge draw when it comes to recruitment, because it seems that a lot of newer veterinarians as well that are coming out, they want to own a practice or start a practice at some point. So they have that possibility to do that. And then at the same time from recruiting too, you have to be somewhat competitive in what you're offering in a salary. And it seems that when, from what I've noticed over the years, is that students tend to be a little bit more drawn to structure. And they also tend to be drawn towards the whole aspect of, I'm going to get maybe compensated a little bit more, which sometimes can be hard for a practice owner that's wanting to, like a 1 to 3 doctor practice owner that wants to hire them. It could be kind of challenging to bring them in. However, the ones that have maybe been working for a little while, they're getting burnt out with corporation. They're tired of that whole, having to see as many patients as they can. And it could be a little bit more enticing if they're offering them, very competitive compensation, but then there's the opportunity for different types of bonus structure. Maybe they could be towards student loans. And it all goes back to what CJ was saying is context. All of that's important with all of this.
That definitely makes sense. So I guess there's another perspective, which is veterinarians who are out and are looking for opportunities, and they're approaching these different like practices and job opportunities. And I think they probably have more negotiating power than like the people offering the jobs, just because it seems like the current dynamic is there's a higher demand than there is there is of supply, especially for experienced veterinarians. And so when do you guys ever work with individuals who are then like, here's what I want, how do you think I should structure this kind of the situation, or here's what my goals are, what's the best way for me to get there? Is that something that you guys do also?
So just to make sure I'm understanding here properly, so we're talking about when it comes to, a veterinarian now they're an associate and they want to work for a, 1 to 3 doctor practice. Am I understanding that right?
Yep, exactly. So maybe they're looking at job opportunities. Maybe they want to own a practice, right? Maybe they're out of school. I think pretty common where people start looking at practice ownership after being employed for a few years, and then they think, yeah, maybe I want to start a practice. And I think there are a lot of vets that are exiting. So is that something that you guys do, saying, here's what I would suggest you approach somebody in this situation with this kind of a practice size and set up some kind of a structure to handle that?
Every day we help with those circumstances. And that's even like the example CJ was bringing up earlier. We're actually working through a transition right now of one veterinarian buying a practice. And, part of it's financing, part of it's through a specialized agreement that we're looking to set up instead of like an installment note. And I would say a lot of times we can almost be like not necessarily just like an intermediary, but more of a person there to be able to expose or be able to bring up new ideas along the way. So like if there is a veterinarian that wants to work for a practice and they have that desire to own it, we can help start the conversation to give them a lot of great ideas and things that they can do. And then if they can be able to connect us with the owner, the person who's trying to sell, we can usually try to make it to where it's a win-win circumstance, to where, we can be able to reduce some of the risk, some of the taxes, be able to make sure that the owner or the person who's selling gets what they're looking for. And then also the person who's trying to buy the practice can be able to not have to overpay for something. And I will say in a lot of circumstances, depending on the environment, there are buying groups that are out there that can make it challenging for some people. And what CJ was saying earlier too, is that if you find someone like the practice we're working with right now, the lady wants to sell to the veterinarian. Mm-hmm. So like she had corporates, buying groups and everyone else coming to her to buy it. But then she's like, I want to sell it to you, to the associate veterinarian. And, those are ideal circumstances. But if it was something they were interested in doing and they're trying to start working somewhere, or they have started working in a practice, if they can bring us into the conversation, we can start talking about like, what are their options? What are the challenges? What are some of the opportunities that we have here to be able to do this? And what would that transition look like over time to make sure that the seller is getting what they're looking for and the buyer is getting what they want?
Definitely. That definitely makes sense. So I guess on the kind of attracting and retaining, I think that probably one of the biggest opportunities would probably be just finding, sounds like what you can offer that's different but beneficial, and hot, kind of like in their mind what they really, really want, and how to be really different and set yourself out and try to be creative, especially if you don't necessarily have a large budget, and things like that.
Well, what I would just suggest for those who are listening to this, before you just go and do something because it sounds good, I would first take a step back and look at from a bigger picture to understand what's the ultimate goal of it, and how does it help you as the practice owner be able to achieve what you're trying to achieve. And if you don't know where you're trying to go in your business, that's the first place that we need to first understand. And then that will help kind of drive the ship of what would be necessary to be able to implement in there. So one step at a time.
That definitely makes sense. And thinking back to my own, when I was employed, which was before the Affordable Care Act, so I have no idea what is required now, but whenever I got employment that offered health insurance as a benefit, and I was a young person, I didn't want it because it was terrible health insurance that was really, really expensive, but they offered it like it was the best thing ever. And it's like, this isn't helpful to me. So I think it would have been, definitely different if they had offered like additional education or like, resources that were for where I wanted to be and grow at that time in my life. And I think really tailoring the offer to the person is what will make it effective and probably the ideal person. So if you're trying to exit in the future, how far out do you think is too far out to be considering? Like, is 15 years too far out to start, or what's kind of the threshold that you guys really like to see people start thinking and taking action on stuff?
The day that they buy the practice or start the practice is the day that they should start planning their exit.
Got it.
Because all roads lead to the exit. We can't own businesses forever. We at some point break down, our bodies break down, or we get older. Like, no one, I don't think, wants to work forever. And even if they want to work forever, we're just not all going to have the decision to do that. And so I think, having that in mind of like, there will be an exit. There will be a time when you will no longer own this practice. And what do you want that to look like is critical to at least make central to all plans that someone makes. Because there are people that leave their practice before they wanted to because of events that they couldn't control. And I'll leave this last little bit before Tom, I'll pass it on to you. But this last little bit, I think management in your practice can also be a benefit to the employee and to you, right? And how management is being perceived by the people inside the business, how management themselves, like the people that are inside management, how they're doing things is critical. Like how positive they are. Do they have a personal commitment to the goal of everyone's well-being? Do they have time that they spend with the people that are in the business in order to build healthy relationships and make sure that people are okay? I mean, there's so many parts of management that can really make a difference for the employees that If you don't have somebody that's in that business that's going to be the glue, and you yourself are the glue, it's going to make that business a little bit less valuable to the buyer.
That definitely makes sense. And just from personal experience, I can see like it's amazing the difference I think that culture makes, and having, like you said, just people that are on mission and on purpose to get things done versus practices that have, you can tell. I mean, it'll be amazing just from like an ad perspective, right? Where we run ads for practices, and we'll have practices that are doing amazingly well on the ad side from like the side that I can see, which is the technical stuff, like our clicks and our calls and our activity on their site is looking fantastic. And two practices with very similar, fantastic ad results. One says, we're just not getting appointments. And like the receptionist has a terrible attitude, and they put people on hold, and they're saying, we're not getting any calls. And you have this other practice who's like, this is fantastic. We're so excited. We're making sure we fit everybody in, and we're just really busy, and we're growing like crazy. And it's just like a little bit of a mindset shift, I think, that makes that happen. And it's very interesting because I continually see that pattern happen. You can tell that there's like some people that have some pessimism in there, that little bit of like difference in attitude would make the difference when they answer their phone. And it just is really interesting. But how about you? Do you have anything else to add there, Thomas, on that point real quick?
Well, you'd asked the question earlier around, if someone was wanting to try to sell, and I would say if that someone wanted to sell their business to another veterinarian, at least the 10-year runway is like ideal to be able to really transition a deal to where it can be transitioned over, especially if the other veterinarian doesn't have money to buy it. Mm-hmm. It can be a way to transition it progressively over time in a way where there's certain arrangements and agreements put in place. So everyone should have an exit plan from the beginning, because, ultimately, and I'm just going to say this, some people might agree or not agree with this. We all get into, being a business owner, one, because it's like, I want to do things the way I want to do it. And at the same time, though, the business provides a lifestyle. And eventually you're going to get out of that business, and you're going to want to keep that lifestyle. So if you're not making the right decisions along the way to make sure, hey, am I going to be able to keep my lifestyle after I get out of this business? You got to take a step back to understand, okay, what's that going to look like? And then along the way, be able to understand, like, what are my ways that I can exit? How am I being able to bring people into my business to where, their productivity is really improving my bottom line and improving my success of my future as well. And, don't get me wrong here. I know a lot of veterinarians are very, very empathetic, and they're very caring about people. So I don't want it to be perceived in anything as about them all the way. But of course, being a practice owner, you are the one taking all the risk, all the responsibility. It's all on your shoulders. So you should be getting some kind of a reward out of it at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they have very specialized expertise that's extremely valuable too. So like 100%, that makes sense. Well, we mentioned, recruiting and retaining to some extent, but is there anything with rewards that you really think that people are missing out on, right? Rewarding based on performance. Do you think that kind of solves the problem of everybody just expecting a piece of like the results? Or, like I think about like maybe using retention strategies. You don't want to retain the wrong people, right? And so do you have any suggestions for making sure that your retention and reward programs really target the right kind of people, that the wrong kind of people will say, hey, this isn't for me, and then leave the practice? Because I think having, good people is just as important as making sure that the people that are not a good fit aren't sticking around or motivated to stick around at the same time.
Of course. Well, culture is the biggest thing. I mean, people are what make a business. So without them, it's going to all fall apart. And the biggest thing that having anything with reward, I would say, and this is probably something CJ can add some color to this as well, is that people need to be able to know that they can control the circumstances that they're working towards. And if they're getting rewarded for things that are outside of their control, for example, well, the practice did better this year, so let me give you a bonus. that's something that's outside of they can't really, at the end of the day, know what they're doing to improve that. So when there are types of reward stuff that is happening, there should be a program established, either if it's for individuals or it could be for a group of similar roles within a practice. So if like it's all techs, or let's say it's one for the practice manager, maybe it could be some for veterinarians. It just depends. But there should be something established in there. It was so interesting. There's a one of our clients. She actually does this thing where they wanted popcorn, and it was something so silly. It's not even monetary. It was just they wanted these passes to get popcorn. Like it was unlimited popcorn buckets. So it was being able to cater it to what they wanted. And at the same time, they have more of the impact on the results. And for example, like, if you're a receptionist at a practice, it's like, what are you being able to do to be able to help drive the revenue of the business higher? And it's like, maybe the focal point for them should be to, hey, are they being able to get people back into the practice again? Are they scheduling people on an ongoing basis? How many people are they scheduling? And they should be getting rewarded off of a specific thing that they're doing. And then being able to find whatever fits in that spot within those areas. I mean, that would be something, of course, to sit down and talk a little bit more about. But some people are driven, by not necessarily monetary things, but it might be just kind of like experiences or different components that are out there. I know, one thing for this year too, we're doing for our own staff is we are giving them an education allowance that they're going to be able to each be able to just expand their knowledge and be able to do stuff. So, and it's a lot of it's being tied around some of the metrics that they're having to do within the business to be able to qualify for it.
Absolutely. So like along that line of thinking too, I think that a good kind of thing that you mentioned, and one thing that has made a massive difference for me, especially, I think probably the lower kind of ownership stake they have in the end result, probably focusing more on like leading indicators versus lagging indicators, so that it's all about their input and their work on things that they control rather than like the outcome, which they really, if you said, okay, if we make, let's say we do 2,000 of these procedures in a year, then you get like X bonus, right? Where they don't really have control on their marketing and their stuff coming in the door and things like that. But if you do this many activities per week, or, like if you are able to convert 50% of the phone calls that are coming in of new clients into appointments, or your follow-up on this, if you hit these numbers, like those kind of things, I think as the practice owner or the person in charge, if you figure out what numbers people have to hit and then give them a way to be in control of hitting those numbers rather than trying to take ownership for a result in a year, you'll have a higher probability of success, I think.
And one of the best books to read around this particular thing is actually a book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. And that book, I know for me, was a game changer in our practice. And just knowing, okay, when you look at these 4 things to do, because they're very simple and they sound so simple, but let me just tell you, simple does not mean easy, right? Yeah. Simple can actually mean very hard. And so it provides context and it provides a real systematic way to approach these things. And I know Tom and I, to this day, whenever we're working with clients, we use the same exact process, the same thinking process when we go through a lot of this. And it really will lead you to the place where you can directly find a metric, a lead measure that then pushes that lag measure to ultimately accomplish the wildly important goal, which is what they talk about in the 4 disciplines of execution. And, while you have the whirlwind of the business going on, that's literally the word that they use in the book, the whirlwind. You have 1 or 2 things each person is very, very laser focused on, and it can change over time. It doesn't have to be the same every week or every month, but there's one thing that person is focused on, and then their reward is monetary in nature, but that when they do that one thing, it's having an impact on the revenues of the business, and it's having an impact on the profits of the business, whether it be indirectly or directly. So I think people get hung up a lot of the time of how do I bonus somebody when they don't have direct impact on the profits? Well, you might have to kind of weed out or wiggle your way down to what that exact action is in their role, and then figure out how they can make the business more profitable. Maybe they're not even doing it. They're not even doing that one thing that would help you. But you work your way through that, and now you have something that you can give somebody inside the business that can impact that bottom line and make it more beneficial for everyone all the way around.
Yep, fantastic. Well, I know that you mentioned that you have 2 assessments available for people. Can you describe those assessments? I'll be sure to put them on veterinarymarketingpodcast.com on the show notes and things. Can you tell me about those 2 assessments that you have and what they're for, and how people can get them and what they do?
Yeah, we actually, so a lot of times people are asking us, like, how do you take a step back to just take a look at everything from a bigger picture? And, we're all about taking a look at things from a 30,000 foot view and being able to then hone in on specific areas. And we created 2 different assessments that are on our website. One is for personal and the other one is for business finances. And the one for personal, if you go right to our website, flvetadvisors.com, you'll be able to see where it says test my plan. It's 10 questions and it'll give you a score at the end to just kind of let you know how you're doing overall in your plan. And then there's another one that we created for the business where it's really designed to be able to understand, like, how are you coordinating your business with your personal plan? And is it going to help you get to where you need to be? And it's another 10 question assessment that we created. It'll also give you a score, but we'll have to share that link. It's not available directly on the main page of our website. But I would highly suggest that if you're looking to try to take your business to the next level, or if you're even looking at your personal finances and you're like, hey, how do I make sure that I'm looking at everything that I possibly could? I would go take a moment and go do them. It'd take you probably less than a couple minutes to complete it. And I think it'll be a great exercise. And, something to add in addition to this too, we will soon have a mini series going out. It's for personal finances. However, we have a 5 video mini series that we're putting out that's going to be complimentary after you complete our assessment, the personal assessment. So you'll be able to get access to that from there too.
Fantastic. And I think it's probably more important than ever with the change of political party. There definitely will be a shakeup in the rules and the benefits and all of that stuff. So it's better time than ever to reach out. And just real quick note too, you guys work with everybody across the US, right? And any other countries, or just the US?
Just the US. I mean, we've had people from Canada ask us if they can talk to us, and we can't. But as long as you're in the US, yes, we can. Don't let Florida Veterinary Advisors fool you into thinking that we can't. We work out of Tampa, Florida, but we have clients all over.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that because it was in the URL and the name, but I knew that you guys worked outside. So if anybody, any questions, though, they're a great resource. And you guys also have a podcast too, which is cool. Why don't you give that a plug too?
Yeah, we back in April last year, we released Smarter Vet Podcast. So we love TED Talks. CJ and I are all about TED Talks. So we wanted to mirror some of our a podcast that was designed to help simplify finances for veterinarians. It can be for students, can be for practice owners. Every episode's around 20 minutes long. We will release 3 episodes every month. And we also do publish interviews with other people as well. So you can be able to, listen to a car ride during a break. But yeah, stay tuned. I think we just had had a few more that just got released recently. So go check it out.
Very cool. Well, I really appreciate your guys' time today. Thank you so much, CJ and Tom. And we'll definitely talk soon. But I appreciate you guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, man. Have a good time.
All right. I hope that was helpful to you. I think that was some really, really good stuff. You can go again to flveterinariadvisors.com. They have a lot of great resources. They have the assessments that they mentioned there. So if you have any questions that you need help with, let CJ and Tom know. They're really nice guys, and they're more than happy to help out. So be sure to mention you listened and heard on the podcast. But hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you on the next episode.